Who are the world's most interesting people? And what fascinating, groundbreaking, incredible things can they teach us? In this new series, I leave our Science of People lab to interview my favorite authors, experts, and celebrities for them to share their best people hacks, social skills, and stories. And let me tell you, they have some juicy tips. This is a new series I'm calling The World's Most Interesting People. Welcome everyone to this installment of World's Most Interesting People. Today, I am so thrilled to have Dr. David Matsumoto on the show. I have been a fan of Dr. Matsumoto's work for years. In fact, I've probably talked about some of his research on this channel. And today we're going to get to dive into it with the man himself. Dr. Matsumoto, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm honored that you asked me to be on your program.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, we're gonna get into it. I don't know if you're gonna be honored by the end. I'm gonna ask you so many questions. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, so much. So I got to tell you a little bit about Dr. Matsumoto. So this bio, by the way, I had to take the very best. There's so much I'm even leaving out. So Dr. Matsumoto is a world-renowned expert in the fields of emotion, nonverbal behavior, deception, and culture. He has produced over 400 academic works, including books, journal articles, book chapters, and conference presentations. 400, that's amazing. And has a number of incredible books, including Culture and Psychology and the APA Handbook of Nonverbal Communication. He is the founder of SFSU's Culture and Emotion Research Laboratory and the director of HumanTel, which I love so much. And he also holds a 7th degree black belt in judo. You are truly one of the world's most interesting people. My very first question is, how do you balance it all? Do you have a productivity hack you can teach us off the bat?
Well, I know we're talking about science, but to tell you the truth, I happen to attribute everything that I do and the success, whatever success I've had, to judo, to the fact that I do judo.
Really?
I've done judo since I was 7 years old, and I am now 59, which means I've done it 52 years continuously. And, talk about a boring life. I don't know, you got the world's interesting people thing here, but my life is, for the last 50 years, I've been going to judo practices almost every night, and then on Saturday mornings, and then most times there's a tournament on Sundays or something, which means that I've got to structure my life around this judo schedule.
Yeah.
And so, because like today, this is a Monday, and I know I've got a judo workout coming up at 5 o'clock. Well, I've got stuff to do, and I got to get it done before I hit that judo practice. And it just made me more efficient and structured in my time. And I happen to be a really regular, disciplined kind of person. And so since that structured me, I was just able to produce, and I just try to produce every day before I need to go and do a workout, to tell you the truth.
Actually, it reminds me of a metaphor in a study I heard once, that there are people who study the physics and movement of space. And they found that if you have a big open space, like a train terminal, where everyone feeds and they have to walk across a big open space, it's chaos. Like, people are constantly bumping into each other. There's no lanes, there's no roads. But if they add an obstacle, which is counterintuitive, like a bench or a little roundabout, all of a sudden the people begin to create flows of traffic.
Sure.
And you have this organization. And so it's almost like, I wonder if judo is like your bench,
Yeah, sure.
and that you can kind of navigate your life around it, because it's one thing you have to do every day or have in your life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I wish it were more like a bench, because I could then sit down and rest. But once you hit workout, you're butting heads with people. But there's another thing about that. It's like any other workout. It wakes you up, and there's a great release after that. And it doesn't matter what happens every day. I go to workout, and I have a great 2 hours there. And I come back. I'm refreshed. I'm ready to go. Or not, it's just that everyday refresher,
So
to tell you the truth.
I always like to give action steps to everyone watching, and I have a little challenge action step just from hearing that, and that's inspiring. Is, first of all, what's your judo? If you're watching, do you have a bench in your life that can help you take a mental break, that you can kind of carve around? Like, what's the one thing in your life that you do not sacrifice your schedule around? Adding an obstacle can actually help you structure and schedule everything else. So that's my challenge for everyone watching. I think that's amazing. Especially, I kind of want to try judo. I've never done it before.
Well, when we get off here, I will figure out where you are, and I can forward you some information about dojo.
I like it. Okay, perfect. All right, now we're getting into the deep stuff. So,
okay.
I religiously read your blog, Human Tell. Everyone who's watching should if you don't already. And you always have something new, some exciting research that's published. I am always thrilled with what comes out. Recently, you published something that got me extremely excited, which is the first scientific evidence that microexpressions are a key to detecting lies and malintent. And I would love for you to walk through, how did you set up the study? What were you doing in the study? And then what did you find?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, before I get to the nuts and bolts about that, let me just say a little bit about the setup of that study, because to me, it's just amazing. You know, we've got the world, as you know, and you've got microexpressions. You feature micros in your work as well, and there's so much rhetoric around micros as an indicator of deception or not.
Right.
That has been around for decades, and of course, there have been many leading researchers that have been proponents of that view for all those decades and whatnot. But if you really sit down and look at the scholarly literature, there's never been a study that's been published in an academic peer-reviewed journal that documented the fact that microexpressions were indicators of deception.
Exactly. Yes.
And I think all of us who are in the field, once you know about them and you're watching for them and you see these situations where they occur, it's kind of intuitive that they're good indicators of hidden mental states.
And by the way, a microexpression defined is correct me if I'm wrong, a brief involuntary facial expression that lasts very quick. It's faster than a facial expression that shows hidden emotion. Did I define that right?
Yes, and I define them as occurring less than 1/2 of a second.
Okay, there we go. Perfect.
On top of it, yeah. But yeah, to think that, and the fact that there was no research that documented this claim was one of the big reasons why a lot of detractors would just point there and say, "Look, there's no science behind that."
I know. Yes.
And I mean, to their credit, there's other researchers, Porter and his colleagues, tried to test that claim back in the early 2000s and published like 3, 4, 5 articles where they actually tested the claim, but found that microexpressions did not occur enough to be indicative of deception. But when you look at those studies, they operationalize, which means measured microexpressions really, really restrictively. They did them at I think it was 1/5 to 1/25 of a second or something like that.
Ooh, fast.
Yeah. And I think they got that thought from other people's claims. I don't want to mention too many names, but other people's claims about how quickly microexpressions occurred. And I've always thought that those claims about the speed of microexpressions were just unfounded and too fast.
Ah.
I mean, for example, there's many claims about 1/25 second microexpressions.
All the time.
Right?
All the time. Yeah.
Where did that come from? Because I was there when we originally found microexpressions in Paul Ekman's lab.
Yeah.
And we were watching 8mm film, which is recorded at 1/24 of a second.
So
right? Yeah.
Where did the 1/25 come from?
Yeah, and then when we moved to video, which is 30 frames a second, we're not getting 1/25 there either. Where does this come from, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So those are just kind of claims that kind of, I think, embellished the thought of microexpressions, which is great because you get it into the popular press. But on the other hand, had a detrimental effect on really serious thinking about this stuff.
Yeah. And
that led to those early studies by Porter and whatnot. I mean, bless their hearts, they did that,
Yeah.
But they used that pretty restrictive and I think impossible definition of micros. Whereas what we did was in that study, if you look at previous research that actually time or measure the timing of naturally occurring, normally expressed expressions, you get them going from a 1/2 second to 4 or 5 seconds.
Huh.
Yeah, like so when you and I are just there talking and we're expressing ourselves, these expressions are occurring 1/2 to 4 or 5 seconds. So then I thought, well, the best way to measure and define microexpressions in research is whatever is below that lower level threshold. So if the lower level threshold is 0.5 seconds, then to me, a micro, we start with anything below 5 seconds.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And then when we did that, then we get those findings.
Okay. So Porter and his colleagues, they just didn't give it enough time. They just didn't give those expressions enough time.
Yes, right. And in fact, we actually measured their time in our study and got their same null results. whereas we started getting results about the importance of micros at around 0.4 seconds. So 0.4, 0.5 seconds, that seems to be where things are occurring.
So your goal was to figure out, does a micro expression predict a lie, or does it come along with a lie? And then how did you test that? How did you make people lie in the lab?
So you have multiple questions there. We have different kinds of experimental paradigms that we use to study lies. In that particular study, we use what's called a mock crime, where individuals come to a laboratory and they are going to commit a crime in the within the context of the experiment.
Sure.
And in our situation, it was a theft. So they're going to go and steal something.
Okay.
However, in that experiment, they were interviewed before they were actually able to do the theft. So we're studying the intent, what their intent was.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And we have these very brief kind of checkpoint screening interviews that last basically 60 to 90 seconds.
Okay.
Of which only 3 questions are about their intent. Like, tell me what you're going to do in the room over there.
Right. Because they may or may not be stealing it, or they're all stealing it.
Right. Some people will and some people won't.
Right.
And I'm not covering a lot of detail about the experience, because when you do research like this, you need to do it in a way where people feel that there's stakes involved.
That's right.
That something going to happen if they're not believed. Because if you do this, for example, in a university laboratory where you bring intro psych kids in students, and you get them to do research, they all know that they're going to get their credit and they don't need, so they just go along. Right. They don't care. When you don't care, you're not emotional about it. You're not thinking twice about it, blah, blah, blah. In all of our studies that we've been publishing in the last decade or so, we only involve community participants who come in. They come in. The average age of the people in our studies range from 26 or 27 or to 40 something.
Oh, amazing. So much more accurate of the actual population, not 19-year-olds. It's like,
yeah. And there's stakes involved. There's a number of manipulations that we have that we impose on the individuals, and then we're measuring how they're doing in terms of their emotionality and whether they're afraid of things or not. Or, anyways, when there's stakes involved, then the people will be producing some stuff. And yeah, so in those situations, they produce these microexpressions and other kinds of behavior that are indicative of their mental states.
So did you notice the same microexpressions coming up over and over again? Like, was it fear? Was it disgust? Was it sadness? Or what did you see?
Well, you see a range of them.
Okay.
What's interesting to us is that most of the liars have some kind of negative emotion, whether it's anger, contempt, disgust, fear, or sad.
Yep. Anger, contempt, sadness, fear.
So they have one of those.
Okay.
I don't know why some have anger and some have disgust and some have fear. And I think it's probably an individual difference as to each person and how they process those kinds of situations. So like if you, Vanessa, the security guard, are asking me about my intent, I may get pissed off at you by asking that. Whereas the next person may be afraid of you. Whereas the next person may be discomforted about the fact that they're lying. So everybody has a different take on that.
Right.
And I think that's about an individual difference as to what emotion they're actually going to be. But it's generally not positive.
So here's something interesting for people watching. So I know we have a lot of dabblers in human lie detection. And when we're talking about human lie detection, one emotion that there isn't a universal expression for is guilt, right? And I talk about this a lot in my work, is that not all guilt looks the same and not all guilt feels the same. So just as Dr. Matsumoto mentioned, I might feel disgusted with myself for lying. Right? That might make me feel dirty. Where someone else might get angry that they're being challenged. They don't mind lying, but they don't want to be challenged. Those are two very different emotions for the same intent or action, which is a lie in the end.
Right. You're exactly right. And there's no universal signal of guilt. And guilt is often, talked about in our experience as an interpretation of some other emotion plus a context. And you're the observer. Guilt is something that we usually infer about the individual based upon some emotion in the context. So you're exactly right about the signal value of that.
And this also has me caution everyone. So there's a game that we like to play on our YouTube channel. I'm sure you've played with me before, which is the game Two Truths and a Lie. So two truths and a lie is a really fun game. You tell two things that are true about yourself and one lie. And it's a really fun game to play. However, it's not always the best way to test your lie detection abilities because there are no stakes. As Dr. Matsumoto mentioned, that's a fun game, right? Like my goal is to trick you. My goal isn't, I'm not ashamed. I'm not trying to hide a bad intention. So it's much less likely that you're going to see some sort of negative leak of a microexpression, even though you actually are lying, because there isn't the stakes there.
Sure, you're exactly right. I mean, you and I probably get this question a lot by people we meet is, oh, hey, tell me if I'm lying. My birthday's April 25th.
All the time.
I say, listen, buddy, I can't do that. But I tell you what, let's play this game. I'll ask you 20 questions, and if I get it, I get your car over there.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean now, so when you load them with stakes or something like that, you know, then it's obviously it's very different.
Okay, I love that you get that issue as well, and I might also take them to that challenge. Well, they might take me up on that. They might be like, okay, 20 questions, let's go. Oh gosh, and then you're stuck there for all night long.
Yeah.
Okay, I would love to dive into, and I don't know if you can answer this question, but I know that you serve as a regular instructor at the FBI, and I'm sure you cannot discuss in detail, but what's a strategy or tip you've taught to people like the FBI that us regular folks might be able to use?
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing that up. Let me just make one clarification. I think you're referring to the fact that I was an instructor at the FBI National Academy.
Yes.
So I was an instructor. I was, that ended a few years ago.
Okay.
I currently work with them and other members, other agencies of the government. But with regard to the instruction at the FBI, that ended. So I'm not currently an FBI, a National Academy instructor. So I want to make that clear to everybody.
Love it. Yep.
I mean, it's very clear to me. Yes, there's a lot of details that we can't get into, but there's one that I think everybody should get into, and I'm sure your listeners are all on top of this, which is if you want to be better at this skill,
Decoding people, reading people, spotting lies.
Yeah, yeah. Observe. Just observe, because there's so many people who are in interactions who are not really observing.
Yeah.
I think we overlook the fact that we can really be in active observation as well as active listening. So this thing about active listening, we've heard this all over the last few decades about how important it is in communication and all. Clearly, it's important. But what that misses is the active observation part. And that's not just about looking at somebody. It's really processing what you're seeing as you're doing the active listening. So it's a pretty tough cognitive task.
It's two. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. But if you're not observing, then it doesn't matter what skill you have because you're not going to be seeing it anyway. So I see a lot of people who are like looking around or looking at an interview sheet or doing something else or watching a scene but not observing.
Right.
Yeah, I think my first suggestion to everybody is always you want to get good at this stuff. Just observe a little more. And then you can practice observation, right? You can sit there on the bench in the station and just observe people, and you'd be amazed what kind of behaviors people do. So if you just analyze it.
I'd love to break this down. And I completely agree with you that observation is a skill you have to hone. If someone's like, okay, I want to start to do this, how would they break this down into homework for themselves? Would it be 20 minutes at Starbucks, or would it be, no, that's too casual? Would it be at your next conversation with your friend, you're reading their microexpressions, or you're just reading their body language? Or how would you break it down to like homework if you had to?
Hey, Vanessa, I'll give you a great homework for your people.
Okay.
I think you're watching this video thing. Do they see you as well as me?
Yes, both of us.
Great. Okay, have them watch. There you go. Have them watch this video and count the number of times you raised your right hand or you moved your right hand like that.
Oh, I love it. My right hand.
Oh my God. Or your left hand. You've probably done it. I'm going to guess right now. We've been on for about 15, 20 minutes or whatever that is. Look at you. I'll guess you've done that maybe 300 times.
What? 300?
Or 200 times. Something ridiculous. I mean, if you call one of these an excursion from a start to someplace and back, just like this, I bet you're in several hundred range right now.
So here's a great challenge, everyone. At the end of this video, I'm going to put up the count of how many times I raised my right hand. So you can go back and start from the beginning, count them up, see if you get it right. At the end, I'm going to publish the number. Okay?
See, even in that question, you just did it 12 or 13 times.
I must have. And I was also adding more numbers to my count.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So,
But, but because little things like that, I think are just mind-boggling. When you sit there and just count them,
yeah.
it's just amazing what we are just processing and letting go, as opposed to if you just sat there and just watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Little things like that kind of bring that to the front. I mean, I'll give you another example. Once I was in I do this all around the world, and as there's some cultures out there people in some cultures who believe that they're not expressive at all.
Yes.
Like once I was in Japan, and we're talking about self-presentation skills in Japan.
Yes.
And they're telling me, oh, they're very reserved, blah 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 blah.
I hear it all the time.
Yeah, count your gestures. So we happen to have a 5-minute video of some people doing a little, explanation of something, and it was in the hundreds.
So you should look. You're actually expressing.
Yeah, it's maybe smaller in volume.
Yeah.
It's small. It may be smaller in volume, but the frequency is the same. And so, it's just amazing what people think. Once you sit there and actually look at it, it's different.
So a couple challenges for you watching. So yes, I definitely count my right hand. Okay. But also you could look at nods. You could look at genuine smiles. You could focus on one microexpression. How many times does someone show contempt or some kind of other facial punctuator? Pick one and practice. Do you also, Dr. Matsumoto, have a favorite TV show? People ask me this all the time. Do you have a show that you think I could watch to help me practice? Do you think there is such a show?
Oh, no. I think that the best way to practice the naturally occurring ones is watching the news. Watching the news, and especially, for example, watching politicians, but not when they're making a statement, when they're in an interview.
Yeah. Okay.
You see them all the time.
Okay. So news, but not prepared statements. I totally agree. People ask me all the time, what did you think of the president's address? I'm like, it was rehearsed. That's what I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're super coached. Everything is coached.
But even the most coached, presenting individual, like the president and many presidents that we've had, many politicians, once you put them under oath, and somebody else has the power of question, because as you know, questions are incredibly powerful.
Yes.
Even the most well-rehearsed people can get thrown off easily. Yeah.
And that's what good reporters do as well.
Yeah, good reporters do.
Okay, I have a really fun one. This is the one I'm most excited to ask you, which is, you've done so much research. Like, I was looking through your publications and I was like, how am I going to even pick one? So I decided I'd let you pick, which is, do you have a favorite study? And I know that's like asking for a favorite child, but do you have a study that you've done that you just like, you love the result, or you love doing it, or it's like was one of your favorite studies to do?
Sure, I certainly do. My favorite study is always the last one. Because I get that question all the time, like, as you know, and it's like, you always think that this is great and that one's great, but every time one happens, it's like you think it's the best thing that you're doing at that time.
Yeah.
So I can look back at my publications back in the 80s, which to students today is ancient. But I can remember the time that I was doing it, thinking that's the best thing it's the best thing out there,
Yeah.
And so I guess for me, it's always being proud of the product that I'm working on at the time. And I feel once it's out, I feel pretty good about it. Well, no matter how big or small it is, that's the approach I think I've taken.
Yeah.
So when I reflect back about it, I can truly say in my mind that they're all were great to me.
So at the time they were your favorite. Is the last one you did the one that we talked about, the malintent with microexpressions?
I think that's the last one that was actually published. Yes, there's others in the pipeline, but yes, that's.
Anything you can talk about, or are they all secret?
No, they're all along the line. I mean, I'm big nowadays about pushing this thought about clusters of nonverbal behavior in terms of understanding the individual and especially deception, and instead of just one channel.
Totally agreed. Yes.
Yeah. And there's another big research thing about that. I mean, previous research, meta-analyses and whatnot have all kind of shown that previous research has shown that nonverbals are not indicative of deception. But when you look at that previous research, they mostly examined single channels.
Right.
And as you just mentioned, nods and gestures and this and face and all that stuff, when people have things going on in their head, they can signal in multiple channels.
Right.
Thus, examining single channels is a very limited research approach.
I also think that it's dangerous for consumers because there is no Pinocchio's nose, right? There's no one cue that indicates someone's lying, but also one cue alone doesn't mean necessarily any one thing, right? So if someone touches their nose, they could have allergies, they could have had an itch, they could be lying, sure, all those things. And so I always say the rule of three, like if you have to, is there 3 different ways that that's come out, verbally, non-verbally, just to be safe? Because I feel like one cue alone is dangerous.
Yeah, so that goes along the line of understanding clusters of behavioral indicators and whatnot, and I totally agree with that. And I think so. My colleagues and I are trying to push research that it pushes this idea of clusters, and then shows that when you examine clusters, you get really good indices of mental states and deception.
Yeah. Okay. I'm so excited for it. Email it to me the moment it comes out.
Okay.
I want it. I want it. Okay. So
Alrighty.
this one is a little different, this question, which is, you study emotions, you study behavior, you're studying people all day long. Has anything that you learned professionally, have you taken into your personal life, and has it changed something that you do personally?
Vanessa, come on, man. You and I live this stuff, so there's no way that we don't turn it off, or it never turns off.
I know,
right?
I know. Has it changed anything in your personal life? We were like, oh man, I better stop doing that. Or,
yeah. I mean, the thing about it is that, I mean, it depends upon what aspect of your personal life you are, and like any skill, it all comes down to the intent of the individual who has the skill and the ethics and morality of that person. And I think people who are good at reading others can be great leaders and great influencers, and they can be terrorist leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can use it for good and bad. And so for the vast majority of us, I think we try to use it for the good.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to use it to smooth our relations within our family.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a judo coach, and so I'm always out there watching it in our judo players and our opponents and all that kind of stuff to achieve an effect. But when it gets to the rest of the public, and you see things that you don't want to see, I mean, basically I turn a lot of that stuff off, because there's just so much out there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know. It's a blessing and a curse. You see it all the time.
Yes. Yes. A blessing and a curse.
So I have a fun question for you, which is, if I were to give you a grant for unlimited funding, what would you want to study?
Unlimited funding.
Unlimited funding.
I would want to study the same things that I've been studying, but I do it differently. Huh? And here's the reason why. I mean, academics is all secluded in their own little silos.
Yeah.
Psychologists are here, sociologists are there, anthropologists are over there, economics are there. I would want to study things that I study right now, like nonverbal behavior.
Yeah.
But I would put such an interdisciplinary team together that puts together the anthropologists with the economics, with the poli-sci, with the sociologists, with the psychologists, to understand how it all fits in one big picture. Because academics of the academic model we're working on now, basically created Humpty Dumpty, and we're all looking at little pieces of this huge thing that we've broken up in the past. And I think that at some point we've got to put it all together to understand how history and our culture and the politics that we live in, and whatever resources I have, and my genes and this and stuff, affects what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And
we don't have an answer to that. And if you want to talk about pie in the sky, I'd want to do that.
Well, I'll work on that unlimited funding for you.
Okay, it's gotta be with the B now, billions or something like that. So,
a B. Yeah. Okay, I'll work on it. We're hustling.
I'm going to call you next week and check out how you're doing on that.
Okay, good. Everyone subscribe to our channel. We got to get to that B for Dr. Matsumoto, okay? Okay, I have one final big question for you. Sure. A lot of research is trial and error. Not every experiment succeeds. I know that in our very modest experiments that we do, I've set up experiments with the greatest of hope, and none of my hypotheses turn out, and they're total flubs. So I was wondering if you had an experiment that you were really hopeful for that just didn't really work, and if you're still curious about that hypothesis.
The answer is yes. I can't remember exactly which one, because there's so many.
Okay.
Let me take it back. I mean, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about, so I have a list of all the studies that I've done.
Okay. Yep.
I'm above 300 at this point.
Wow.
And each study can generate several papers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But now if you reference the number of papers that I've got in academic peer-reviewed journals is probably 160, 170, something like that.
It's insane for everyone watching.
Yeah.
It's insane.
But just do the math.
Yeah.
Think of all the studies I've got, and then all the papers that I have. There's a difference there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of studies that didn't make there. Now, some of them are, there's a finding, but I just don't have the time to write it up or something like that.
Wow.
There's a lot of those, but there's a lot of those where nothing happened. So
you gotta tell me about one. It can be one that you still have to write up, or one that failed. Which is like, tell us one that you're like, that one keeps me up at night.
Well, nothing keeps me up at night.
Good job. Oh man, I take my work home with me. How do you do that?
So go back to the first part of this interview. You go to judo practice every night, and you're at 2 hours and you're working out. You come home, you eat, and then I can sleep. Sleeping is not a problem. So
this is another life lesson we got to learn from you.
Yeah. Well, but I know of a bunch of research that we're sitting on right now where we've got findings that we're just not writing them up. And it's just basic stuff, basic research stuff, like signals of triumph and signals of other kinds of mental states and signals of other kinds of what people do in different kinds of situations. I mean, we've got a bunch of those, and so we just don't have the time to really devote to doing all of it.
And those signals are really helpful because for people like us, we're always looking for, what is that signal of someone feeling triumphant? What is that signal of someone feeling disappointed? So that kind of research is almost like dictionary work, right? You're like defining things,
right?
But it's hard lifting.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, like, I would probably prioritize our lives. Well, I prioritize what we're doing around where our funding is coming from, and I've got to appease whatever funding sources by doing that work that we're funded for. And so that gets priority and all this other stuff. And by the time that we're done with this thing, we've got the next funding priority, and that thing over there still is there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I could probably just stop right now at all funded research and spend the rest of my blessed years on this earth just writing up stuff that we've done. And I would still be very productive.
That's incredible. Well, it kind of makes me excited because, as I mentioned, I'm an avid reader of Human-Tell, and it means that I know there's so much more coming, and I just have to we have to keep waiting and watching. Where else can our readers and our viewers follow you, follow your work? How can they learn more about what you do? How can they support you?
Well, thank you very much for asking. We do put a lot of our more applied stuff into Human-Tell and our other website right now, which is detectdeception.com.
Okay.
And we've got so much out in just the general scholarly literature.
Yeah.
But the stuff that's relevant for reading people in terms of being able to use it is going to come into one of those two websites. As you mentioned, because of the nature of some of my work, I don't go out and do too many public kinds of things. I was happy to do this one because I knew you beforehand.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. And so I was happy to do this one. Maybe the best way to do it is because you've got a great following as well. We'll keep in touch and figure out ways in which we can channel some of our stuff and you channel some of your stuff this way, and we'll figure that out.
Yeah. So, I mean, for everyone watching, please go read Human-Tell. I have to check out your new website. I think I've dabbled in it a little bit, and I'll put all those links below the video as well. And also, you can bet that everything that Dr. Matsumoto is putting out, I will also try to funnel to you. So keep watching our channel. If I find some great research or you have something newly published, I'll try to put it in our newsletter or on our blog so that you can see it. Thank you so much for giving me your precious time. I know you don't do this very often. I know that our viewers are going to love it. They geek out just like I do on the science. And I can't wait to see more coming up soon.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
If you liked this video, please click the subscribe button below and click on one of these amazing videos up next.